am going to start recording. Excellent. Well, welcome everyone. Um, if you just let me one moment so I can share my screen. There we go. Excellent. So as I was saying, this is a TOEFL workshop specifically about the sections for listening and reading. We are here advisors Roque and Jonathan. And before we continue, we just want to talk about Education USA briefly, who we are, and also our services. We are part of a Department of State network, over 404 offices around the world in over 178 countries and territories. Our mission is to offer information that's precise, complete, and up to date. Great. So with this, we're going to go ahead and discuss some tips about the TOEFL exam. Previously, we already have a workshop discussing other sections of this exam, but how can we also improve or get ready for it? Uh, Basically, it's just to immerse yourself in the language by reading news and any other piece of information in English, of course, getting used to listening lectures in English as well about any subject that's appealing to you, or even subjects that you have not have contact with at school or university or any other area. Talk to native speakers. So it's also useful to talk to someone from an English speaking country. If that's not an option, you can still practice with someone that speaks English. That's still going to be productive and useful. Practice touch typing. Yes, you have to have, since it's an exam that's going to be digital, typing is crucial, specifically speed and accuracy. So also being comfortable with your level of, or your typing speed will be ideal, and take preparation tests. In the year de postulación for Fulbright, you also have some links with practice tests and other resources that you can also look at about the TOEFL exam that can be useful to you. There are no penalties for wrong answers in the TOEFL. So if you choose an incorrect one, it won't discount your total point. But if you don't answer at all, it can also affect your time. So you have to ensure that you choose an answer so you can continue to the next section. And because the TOEFL is against time, so efficiency is important. Also, learning academic English, it is essential for this because the level of the TOEFL exam is to a higher academic level instead of your colloquial day-to-day English. And for that reason, reviewing some vocabulary that is present in this presentation or other resources is crucial for this. And the best way to study vocabulary is to use flashcards. There are apps that you can use also instead of just writing everything in physical flashcards, or anything that work for you can be also useful for this. Reading newspapers, journals, magazines are excellent places to start as well. And the most common or the most popular ones are the New York Times, The Atlantic, The Economist, Discover, and Nature. So basically, just anything that's academic and that also has some sort of scientific background to it can be very useful for the exam to just get accustomed to all the aspects of this test. And with this, we're gonna dive in straight to the listening section that here my colleague John is going to talk to us about.
Thank you, Roque. So I'm going to begin talking a little bit about what the listening is. So basically, the listening is the part of the TOEFL test. Well, some people call it TOEFL, some others call it TOEFL. I mean, there's not a right answer for that, but the first advice that some people would consider is understanding the test format And there are three things that we need to consider in this. The first is a variety of question types. As you know, the TOEFL will actually dive into different sections and different questions. So it's always important to understand that it's a multiple choice test. Okay, probably you will not have any part to complete, especially here in the listening part. So you're going to just listen to some audios. So you need to actually inference, like you need to do some inference in the audios. You need to get the important points and talk about some aspects that are important, and you need to know what kind of questions you're going to be asked. The second part about this is listening comprehension passages. This is similar to the reading, that's why they put it like listening and reading first, because the first 2 hours or the first hour in this case, because TOEFL has changed recently, it's all about listening and reading. So you're gonna listen to some audios, and in these audios you're gonna listen to, probably it will ask you some questions regarding some specific aspects. For example, you're gonna listen to an audio talking about cars, for example, and the question later will be, in this part of the conversation, how does the lecturer feel about this, for example? So you need to understand what kind of question and what you're looking for. The number three is time management. As Roque said before, this is not an English test. This is a time test. It's like you fighting against time. Because in regular conditions, all of us can have great tests. I mean, we can complete everything, relaxed and everything. But this is actually how to manage stress and anxiety in difficult times. So we can go to the next slide. And there probably we're gonna have the second slide, which is going to be about developing effective listening techniques. There is something called active listening. It comes from active reading. Some people at the university developed this technique, which is basically to engage actively with the audio recordings by focusing on key details, identifying main ideas, and making inferences. This approach will help you to better comprehend the content and retain the information necessary to answer the questions. So basically, this active listening, it's about before listening to the audio, you already know what you're looking for. For example, in the listening, you're going to listen to a student and a professor talking about a topic. So you know that one of the questions will be, what does the professor offer to the student? And the second question will be, why does the student approach the professor? Those are the kind of questions that you're going to listen. And probably they're going to start up talking about elephants, and then they're going to talk about cars, and then they're going to talk about buildings. So they're going to talk about lots of things, but you need to first try to understand what's the beginning of the conversation. Note-taking strategies. You need to develop effective note-taking techniques to capture important information from the listening passages. This may include identifying key vocabulary, dates, names, and other relevant details that can aid in answering the questions. Using symbols is also important. Basically, instead of writing the whole word, maybe you can draw something that's a lot quicker, and it will help you better to actually get the important ideas. Also, identifying context clues. In this case, it's important to pay attention to the context of clues. Not all the information is literal. Sometimes you need to think a little bit deeper. This happens to the cultural questions you're going to have in TOEFL listening. So we can go to the next slide. Excellent. So there we have improving vocabulary and comprehension. There are three things we need to consider in this. The first one is vocabulary expansion. The second one, contextual understanding, and the last one is listening comprehension and practice. In the first talk that I gave regarding TOEFL, I gave you some links that you can access to, some practice tests. And the thing about the TOEFL is that you just need to practice. The more you practice, the better it'll be. Like you're gonna enhance your scores. You're gonna have better scores. But still, it's important to have this into account whenever you talk about the TOEFL. For example, the first part says that enhance your TOEFL vocabulary by regularly studying academic and conversational English words. It's always important to communicate with friends. Actually, I don't know what Rocket thinks about this, but now there is a very interesting tool which is ChatGPT. In this new version, you can ask ChatGPT to give you some feedback or some advice regarding your English level, and also provide you with some extra vocabularies. And there are other platforms, for example, Speak and Improve, so you can basically listen to the audios and respond properly. So it's going to be interesting as well. It's always important to understand the American culture, the American way of life, because probably sometimes they're going to use phrases that are slangs or there are idioms we don't actually understand. For example, it's raining ducks and cats. We don't usually say that here in Paraguay, but they do it all the time. So it's important to understand the American culture for the TOEFL listening. And the last one is just to practice. So we can go to the next one. And yes, practicing with authentic listening materials. As Rocky said before, journals are important if you want to practice for reading because comprehension is important. But what do you do with listening? With listening, you can listen to some podcasts, you can listen to some lectures and discussions, and of course, the practice test that I sent in the first class. If you look in Google, for example, if you search there, Google, well, no, actually, you look for listening practice for the TOEFL. You're gonna find lots of platforms that can help you to improve your listening skills. The first one is going to be podcasts. So if you're going to study for podcast, I recommend one podcast that is interesting that is about crimes. I love crimes, so I love listening to crime podcasts. And also there's another one that talks about marriage, other podcasts that talk about movies and all that. So it's important you find something that you like, and there is a talking about the one that you like, or start listening to information about things you like. Lectures and discussions. Remember that the TOEFL, it's gonna be a little bit about what it will feel like to be at a university in the United States. So that's why it's better to have the experience before taking the TOEFL. So you can look for some classes, I don't know, biology classes in YouTube or history classes. So maybe you can get used to actually getting the vocabulary you're going to need whenever you get to the situation where you need to take the listening test in the TOEFL. Then we have the next slide. Um, Excellent. Managing time and stress during the test. As we always said, and we already mentioned this before, the TOEFL is not an English test. It's actually a time test. How can you manage stress and work under pressure? So that's why it's important that you focus on three things. The first one is going to be time management. How can you do it? For example, I think you're going to have 39 minutes for the listening test or 30 minutes. I'm not sure about that, but you're not gonna have lots of time for TOEFL. So in listening part, so you can actually try to do it as fast as you can. So you need to think fast. So the best way to do that is skimming the questions before audio begins. So before you play the audio, you can read the questions, taking notes quickly, and careful pacing yourself to ensure you have enough time to answer all the questions. There will be a timer counting your minutes in the TOEFL test, so that's why it's important that you can look at that all the time to know how long you have to finish the test. You also have the stress reduction techniques, which is deep breathing. It's a key to everything. You need to manage stress during tests, maintaining calm and focused mindset. It will always help you to better process the listening passages. And the last one is confidence building. Well, you know that if you don't do well at the TOEFL, it's not the end of the world. It's always better to have a bad test before the real test. So try to take lots of practice tests. And I know what usually happens is that we take a practice test and we do horribly bad, we do horrible in the test. So we feel awful and we don't want to respond the same way in the real test. But it's always better to fail. You know, you can fail lots of times before taking the real test because whenever the time comes, you're going to be ready for taking a more serious test. Yeah. And then um yeah, as I told you before, there are some specific questions in the TOEFL. I talked already about the question types. You need to familiarize with the different questions that will appear in TOEFL, such as finding the main idea, finding detail points, inference, and purpose questions. Purpose questions is going to be, why does the professor use this phrase? And then the phrase is, horses are white. Okay, because you need to know the horses are white because you're going to talk about horses. So usually they start with a simple question that can go to a deeper understanding. So understanding the purpose and structure of each question type will help you develop targeted strategies for answering them effectively. The second one is answering strategies. Learn effective strategies for answering each question type, such as identifying key details, making logical inferences, and understanding the overall context and purpose of the listening passage. Practicing these strategies will improve your ability to select the correct answers. And the last one is process of elimination. This is the famous descartes that we use in Spanish. So when faced with multiple choice questions, utilize the process of elimination to narrow down the options and identify the most likely correct answer. This technique can be particularly useful when you're unsure about or of the exact answer. And I think that was, yeah, I have one more, and I think this is my last slide that I'm going to talk about. So, achieving your desired TOEFL listening score, it's possible. You know, it's not the most difficult thing in the world. You just need to focus on four things that are important. The first one is practice, consistent practice. Not that you practice one time and then you never go back to the same book. You can practice every day, a little bit of every day. So it's basically the key to improving your TOEFL listening skills. Dedicate time each day to listening practice and review. Then you need to have a targeted feedback. As I told you before, those platforms that I mentioned, Speak and Improve, I don't know, ChatGPT or other platforms, they help you to have specific goals. This is actually a third platform that I recommend, which is Small Talk. And there basically you can practice your English and it will give you a feedback of how fast you are speaking. Probably now I'm speaking too fast, but that's because I'm thinking faster than I speak. So the platform will help you to regulate your voice, like your tone voice or voice tone, and it will help you to improve your speaking way. Exam simulation, it's always better to take practice tests. And the last one is patience. I think patience is the key to everything. If you don't succeed the first time, you will have another chance and another chance until the real test comes up. And then I think I'll give the word back to Roque. Yes.
Perfect. Thank you, John, for that. And I will be now talking about the reading portion of the exam. For this, I will be just going over the types of questions that you will be seeing on the exam, and we'll also see a few examples for this. And at the end of the presentation, you will have the link where you can actually go and see in more detail, more information about the questions. Some of the type of questions are a little bit harder to talk about here with an example during the presentation. But after, you can go ahead and check the link that I will share with you, and you can see in detail about that. So the reading portion of the exam includes two reading passages, each approximately 700 words long, with 10 questions per passage. So it should take about 35 minutes to complete the reading section of the exam. So these reading portions are usually derived from university level textbooks, so already measuring your academic knowledge on how to interpret information from said level of English. The passages cover a variety of subjects. It goes from science to history to art and technology, even anything that's related to colloquial to in an academic level. Okay, so let's start off with the factual information types of reading questions that you will say. It says explicitly stated, where you have to determine major ideas, supporting details, definitions, according to the paragraph that you're offered, and also answering paragraph X answers which of the following. Basically, that's the type of questions that you're going to be seeing when there's a factual information type. And then we also have the negative factual information, where 3 out of 4 answers are true and which of them is false. So basically, you just have to filter out the option here that is false. So for negative factual information questions, look for the words not or except in capital letters. So you have to be familiar with that. According to the paragraph, which of the following is not true? The author mentions all of this except. So this is an example of a factual information type of question. You will have a passage here that describes a piece of information, and then According to paragraph 3, how did scientists determine that a large meteorite had impacted Earth? So, like I said, it's a factual type question. You read all the information, take the main idea, and since we have this here, I will usually give you some time to read and then ask you to give me your thoughts on this and what the option for this will be. But due to the short time that we have together, I will share the right answer for this, which is option number two. They found a unique layer of sediment worldwide. And also, like I say, you can go ahead and check why this option is the correct one in this particular passage. Same thing, we also have an example here about a negative factual information question. Remember that here you're looking for the words is not or except. In this case, for example, the same thing, you have a piece of information or a paragraph about scientific text. And then the question is asking you, all of the following statements are true of the impact at the end of the Cretaceous period, except, and then you have to determine the part or the sentence that does not belong in this option. Inference questions ask you to identify information or comprehend an idea that is not explicitly stated in the reading passage. So you can recognize inference questions because they usually include the words infer, imply, suggest, like in this example. So these are the leading questions after you read said passages, such as which of the following can be inferred from paragraph 1 about X. The author of the paragraph implies that X or paragraph X suggests which of the following about what. So it's basically just getting that meaning that is not explicitly mentioned in the text. So totally the opposite of the first two types of questions that we're analyzing before. Rhetorical purpose questions are similar because they also ask for information that is not explicitly stated. These will ask why the author has presented a piece of information. So basically, the reason behind this. Why does the author mention this? For this, we also have an example in this presentation, which also presents it's the similar piece of information, in this case, related to what we have previously seen before in other examples. And the question says, which of the following can be inferred from the paragraph about the location of the meteorite impact in Mexico in order to our limited time? I'm going to give you the correct answer for this, which will be option number 3. And again, you can follow up with more detail about the information of this particular example and also other praxis tests. Rhetorical purpose, remember the main objective of this type of questions is to identify the reason or why the author mentions a particular piece of information in the paragraph. For this one in particular, the correct answer is option number 3. Then we also have vocabulary questions that ask you to identify the meaning of words and phrases as they are used in the reading passage. So also Jonathan was mentioning before that a level of vocabulary is essential in this test. Not only knowing one of the meaning or the meaning of one word, it is also being able to identify or interpret a particular word in a particular scenario. It is easy to identify vocabulary questions because there will be a word or phrase highlighted in the reading passage, and you will see questions like this, which phrases are closest in meaning or the author means. So super easy questions in terms of identifying them. However, you also have to be familiar of what the author is trying to use or the meaning behind it. An example here, there is increasing evidence that the impacts of meteorites have had important effects on Earth, particularly in the field of biological evolution. Such impacts continue to pose a natural hazard to life on Earth. The word is closest in meaning to, and then we have option 1 claim, option 2, model, option 3, assume, option 4, present. And the correct answer for this particular example is number 4, present. Then we have the other types of questions that are called sentence simplification questions that ask you to identify a sentence that has essentially the same meaning as a sentence from the reading passage. The correct answer choices contain the main ideas from the sentence in a passage, but may leave out minor and important details. Like the name of the type of question says, it is simplifying the sentence into what the question is asking you to analyze. So leaving out details that are not important at that time. Sentence simplification, identifying a sentence that has essentially the same meaning. Correct answers contain the main ideas restated in a simpler way. So in here, you will see an example or a question like this, where you have a specific sentence, and then it asks you to identify which of the following options is the correct one that represents the original sentence. In this particular example, the sentence simplification, number 1 is the one that's correct. Then we have the last two types of questions that you can expect in the reading section. There are the insert text questions are designed to show that you understand the logical order of ideas in a reading passage. Insert text understand the logical order of ideas in a reading passage. In here, you will see options where you have to insert pieces of information, sentences that are missing from a paragraph. So that is very important that you can manage your time in terms of reading and comprehending the type of information that you are getting and inserting the correct option in those spaces that are blank. And then the prose summary questions are designed to show that you recognize the major ideas and the relative importance of information in a reading passage. There are 6 choices for this type of questions, and you will need to select the 3 correct choices that express the most important ideas in the passage. The incorrect answers will misrepresent information in the passage. So it is important that after reading said passage and after being presented with the options, you choose the one that are most appropriate to that particular passage. And again, this is a type of question that it is a little bit more difficult to demonstrate in an example. However, if you're interested in going into detail about these particular examples, I strongly recommend that you access this website that I have here. All this information is straight from ets.org. You can also dive in and check out all the other information about the other sections that are part of the TOEFL, which we're discussing today, and we previously have a different workshop for the speaking portion and the writing portion of the exam. So I strongly recommend that you go over these and that you also check those links that Jonathan was sharing before with practice tests and also other resources that are crucial for good performance in this exam. And best of luck for your tests. If you have any questions or if you see any type of information that is not clear enough, you can always ask for help from Education USA. You can send us an email to asuncion@educationusa.org, San Lorenzo at educationusa.org, or Ciudad del Este at educationusa.org. You can also share any questions that you have in the official WhatsApp group that we have, or any other means that are official ways of communication with Education USA. And with this, we leave the recording section of the presentation. And if you have questions, we can go ahead and answer those for you.